I'm Karl Lange. We're over here at Dan Anderson's at Therapeutic Associates at Bridle Trails. I'm here with Danny Beeman and Kristin Hirano. We're all just talking about health. We all have a little bit of a different perspective, and wanted to introduce you to Danny.
I'm Danny Beeman, physical therapist. I've been practicing for 18 years, focusing on geriatric, catastrophic injuries, post-orthopedic patients. And here, over the last 3 years, I've done a lot with weight loss and nutrition and so forth. So just kind of here to share some of that information along with any other questions that may come up. They're physical therapy related. And we're here with Kristin, who is nutritionist.
Yes, my name is Kristin Hirano. I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm board certified in adult weight management. My specialty and my focus is on the microbiome and how it influences weight. And I have recently developed a nutrition supplement, a prebiotic supplement called Just Better. So we'll talk about that a little bit today.
So let me ask you a question. What's the difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian? Because when we were talking, you made sure to correct me and say, "Oh, I'm a dietitian." So what's a dietitian?
Well, the reason I clarify is because the word nutritionist, there's no credentialing. Anybody can call themselves a nutritionist.
Uh-huh.
So yes, you have to be careful. You know that when you're talking to or working with a dietitian, that they have actually completed a 4-year degree, at least a 4-year degree, and a clinical internship, as well as actually now it's required. Most people go on to have some sort of a graduate degree, Master of Science in Human Nutrition. So all of these things, and then pass credentialing type of exam. So the word nutritionist, you have to be careful, just because anybody can use it.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to have Dan come out from back behind the camera for just a second, introduce himself, because it is his place that we're in.
Hi, my name's Dan. I'm a physical therapist, and I do general orthopedics. And I've been here in Bridle Trails for about 15 months now. And Karl walked in my door one day, and he just keeps coming back. So
It's hard to get rid of. I've been trying for 17 years.
We love to, we're both kind of scientific brains and kind of nerdy in that sense, and so we both are very interested in health and love to kind of chat and, like we say, nerd out, and so we get to send each other articles, we just kind of decided to put this together where we can kind of talk and just listen to people and bring other people from the community and talk about health and wellness and what we can do. So.
Before he goes back behind the camera again, one of the things that impresses me about Dan that's a little bit unique in comparison to most of the physical therapists that I've met, because I've been all over the country. I used to travel in an RV actually and go from state to state to state. I had 12 different state licenses, so I know a lot of different therapists, and I've been doing this since 1997. And one of the things that he likes and he's good at is feet. Nobody likes feet. So he's an expert in the biomechanics of the ankle and all of the joints in the foot, which I can't name them all, but I'm sure Dan can. But we'll get into that one of these days. So
Thanks, Karl.
Yeah, no worries. Back behind the camera again. All right. Anyway, so one of the things that I have just recently come across that I had no idea about, unfortunately, it's terrible to say, because I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've always had an emphasis on exercise and trying to lose weight. And as I have been getting older and older, I've been seeing my waistline actually grow more and more, and I had no idea why that was happening, because I had always been told about calories in, calories out, exercise more, and I'm a little bit ashamed of how little I know about nutrition. And I started reading some books, and I met Kristin, and she started teaching me about some things that I had never even heard of. And we went to a microbiome course. I had no idea what a microbiome was. I'll let her explain that to you guys in just a second. But I have learned an incredible amount about how nutrition plays a part in being fit. Things that I had no idea about. So there was a couple of things that I didn't really know about, and I'm going to ask Kristin to explain these things. But you know, one thing is that I've come across in a lot of the books that we've been reading about the microbiome. And can you explain what the microbiome is? What is that?
Well, specifically the gut microbiome. The way that I kind of like to explain it is, if you think about the intestine, it's kind of like a long tube or a pipe, right? And on the inside of the tube is all of these folds, and then the villi and the microvilli. Their purpose is to increase absorption area, right? So the way that I like to explain it, so if you think of like a tube, our intestine, and if you cut a cross section of it, it's kind of like a cylinder. A stadium is kind of like a cylinder, right? With just the top end kind of opened up. So if you think of Seahawks Stadium or CenturyLink Stadium, and if you think of all the seats in CenturyLink Stadium being those little areas of absorption, like those villi and microvilli. So our goal, the goal for good immune function and a strong microbiome, is to get all of those seats filled with good bacteria, probiotics. So if we think of the Seahawks fans as the good bacteria or probiotics, and the goal being sold out crowd, right? We want every single one of those seats filled with a good probiotic or a Seahawks fan, right? So that when the bad guys or the bad bacteria or viruses or the
Niners
San
fans.
yeah, that's right. San Francisco fans come into the stadium, they try to find a seat. There's no place for them to sit, and so they're forced to leave.
Right.
So that's kind of the whole theory behind immune function, and also a good portion of the, what's happening in our microbiome. But also, when it comes to weight, we now know that it has everything to do with the good to bad bacteria, because we now know the thin people, you know, I call them the string beans of the world, the people that seem to be able to eat anything and everything and never gain an ounce, right?
The fast metabolism people who are waking up at 4 in the morning and working out. I never see them working out, never.
Right.
But that's what we think, right?
I know. I always tease that if I could have a superpower, it would be exactly that. I could eat anything and everything.
And they're
never
eating
gain an ounce.
Cheetos,
Right.
and they're eating all the Pizza Hut.
Right.
You're eating your salad, and you're freaking like this big, and they're like this big, but they're it's, yeah.
So the string beans of the world, their bacteria, the ratio of good to bad bugs, their microbiome essentially is very different from the rest of us who struggle with weight.
So how is that a genetic thing, or how is that influenced?
So the way that we develop our microbiome is, first of all, the way that we were born, right? Were you born C-section or were you born traditional vaginal delivery? If you were born C-section, you don't get all those good bacteria from your mom, right? So that's the beginning seeds of all the good bacteria and the diversity. Second of all, the way that we develop our microbiome is breastfeeding. So if you were formula fed, then you also have a deficiency of all of those bacteria that you would have been exposed to had you been breastfed. On top of that, it has everything to do with the number of times you've been exposed to antibiotics,
That was gonna be a question.
right? And the age, because we now know that children that are exposed to antibiotic before the age of 6 months, their risk of being overweight by the age of 7 is extremely high.
Wow.
So all of these things, kind of the beginnings of our microbiome and the diversity of all the number of species, is really, really important. And again, I mean, how many times, you know, we're flooded with antibiotics, right? And things like artificial sweeteners. Essentially, eating any kind of artificial sweetener will wipe out all of your good bacteria in your gut. So
On that note, what about stevia? Because that's the one.
Yeah, so stevia that's not considered an artificial sweetener.
Okay.
So that's the one that's kind of like the okay one. But essentially, all of the others have a negative effect on our microbiome. I mean, things like even like your PPIs and all of your antacids and all of that.
Whoa, what's a PPI?
Proton pump inhibitors.
Right.
So the people that have reflux, I think it's one of the largest prescribed drugs in the United States.
Right.
So
Sure.
all of those things
Like
have an
Tic
effect.
Tacs.
Right, I know, exactly.
One of the bad problems that you have to
Right.
deal with when your waistline does start getting a little bit
Exactly.
bigger, right? And Zantac.
So,
Yeah.
all of these people that
Meprazole.
are dieting and trying to lose weight and eating diet foods and diet soda, all of these things, artificial sweeteners, are all having an effect on the microbiome.
That's interesting because I've actually lost 42 pounds over 3 years, and one of the things that I gave up was the diet sodas and using stevia. That's why
Yes.
I asked.
Yeah.
I guess another thing being working with the geriatric population and stuff, and especially getting frequent UTIs or urinary tract infections, and they're getting antibiotics over and over again. How is that? At age 70, how is that affecting you versus,
No, that's a good question.
Right,
Really
right.
good question.
So the thing is, of course, we're going to have times when we are sick and need an antibiotic. The thing that we want to ask the doctor to do is actually determine what is the bug, the particular bacteria that is causing the illness, and treat specifically that bacteria. So a narrow spectrum antibiotic, as opposed to a broad spectrum antibiotic, which kills the bad bugs, but also kills all the good ones too.
Would like Z-Pak be considered a broad spectrum?
So I know we can look these up. You can Google it, and it'll tell you right away if it's a narrow spectrum or a broad spectrum. Yeah.
But to go back for a second. So the thing that I had heard and growing up and through physical therapy school was that in order to stay thin, you had to make sure that it's calories in, calories out. So you end up eating a certain amount of calories. It's all about calories, right? And if you didn't exercise enough, then you would store it as fat. And what you're saying is that that's not exactly true.
No.
You're saying that there's this other. Is that true a little bit?
No.
No. Okay. So I got to relearn this whole thing, right? That's not true at all.
No.
Okay. So one of the things that that we talked about a little bit, or that we learned in that one course, was the whole mice thing, and that was fascinating because I had never heard that before.
So, the research studies, what they've done is taken actual mice from the same litter, essentially identical twins, kept them in similar cages, fed them the same amount. So there's same amount of activity, same amount of food, the same type of food, everything is the same, and exposed one to an antibiotic. When that happens, the one that has been treated with the antibiotic gains weight. There's no change to the food and no change to the activity. So the only thing that has changed is the microbiome.
So what's happening? I mean, So when you have so you got good bacteria. Do these good bacteria have a name, and the bad bacteria have a name? Like are they like? Is this like a scientific thing that is researched and they have names, or is this like a philosophical thing? No, okay.
It's a real thing.
Okay, it's a real
for
thing.
real.
All right.
So essentially there's kind of two families or classes of bacteria. Firmicutes, which I call the bad guys, because they're the get fat bacteria.
Firmicutes.
And then the Bacteroidetes.
And Dan, can you make sure to put Firmicutes?
All right, with the next definition and explanation.
All right, and then the Bacteroidetes.
Bacteroidetes.
Yes, those are the good guys.
All right.
They're the get skinny bacteria. And what we found is that the people who are overweight have 20% more of the Firmicutes, the bad guys, the get fat bacteria, and 90% less of the get skinny, the Bacteroidetes bacteria. So the reason I call these guys the Firmicutes, the bad guys, get fat bacteria, is because they actually extract more calories from the food that we eat and direct it to be laid down as fat.
Okay.
So it's the bacteria that actually determine whether or not you extract the calories from the food or not. So for the people, the string beans in the world, their bacteria is actually telling them, there's plenty of food here. Let's just keep it moving. We don't need to absorb this. Just keep it moving. They don't actually absorb the calories from the food that they get. Now, in a famine condition, those of us who have more of Firmicutes would actually be in a good situation, right? Because we actually extract more calories from the food that we eat. But as it is right now, since there's plenty of food, this is a problem.
Right.
Is,
Now you know why I brought her onto the show, right? Like crazy cool.
is there a test to see which bacteria? And if
Yeah.
so, like where
Good
would
question.
you?
Yes.
What is that? Do you have to go to your doctor, or can I get it online, or can I get it through you? How does that work?
Yep, online. There's several different companies that are doing this testing service now. Ubiome is ubiome.com, so ubiome.com.
Uh-huh.
And then AmericanGut.com is another one that you can you can buy the testing kit and do the test and send it back, and they will send you the results of your microbiome. So that's actually a really great way to determine what is going on in your microbiome, what deficiencies and overgrowths that you might have, and then target your nutrition accordingly.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So now I come back.
Yes.
Now I've got 30% bad bacteria.
Yes.
Like what kind of things would I be looking to change then?
So in that test, they would probably tell you specifically
They
which
do.
bacteria and which strains you're deficient in. But for the most part, any kind of fermented food, you want to start increasing your intake of fermented food in every single day.
Examples of fermented food.
So of course we think of yogurt,
Right.
Yogurt.
Okay.
So kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, tempeh. Kombucha, even beer and wine is considered part of the fermented food group. Yeah.
Is
Okay.
vodka?
Cut
that out.
So one of the things, a couple of things. One, I had read something about mice, and it was a little bit of a different study than you just mentioned, but it was also about the fat mice and the thin mice that had the same amount of caloric intake. They were eating the same
Same
exact
exact.
things, but then they switched. They took some of the microbiome
Yes.
from one. Can you
Transplant.
can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so they found that, well, and also if you combine the mice and put them in the same cage, because they are a type of animals that actually eat each other's droppings.
Great.
So essentially they're
Keep it clean.
doing fecal transplant is essentially what they're doing. But when that happens, then the fat mouse will lose weight.
Huh.
So yeah.
So what's going on there? Can you?
So essentially, it's a fecal transplant, and we've seen this now in because we do this for C. difficile bacteria, or excuse me, antibiotic-resistant type bacteria. So they've done a fecal transplant, and it's very, very effective.
right, the poop pill.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Right. And I don't know if you guys know about the poop
Yeah.
pill, but we'll explain
Don't.
that later one of these days. It's really
So
gross
essentially-
sounding, but it actually fixes even a grosser problem.
Yeah.
And basically what happens is that some people get an infection that's called C. difficile. C. diff, we call it. Difficile sounds for difficult. It's a difficult virus to get, or difficult bacteria to get rid of. And all you're doing is you just have a lot of diarrhea. You can't stop. And basically what they've done is they figured out that one of the cures to this that is starting to gain more traction is to take this fecal transplant, which is, can you explain exactly what that means?
Essentially, they do they extract bacteria from one person's stool, and then they
Usually a loved one in the household,
yes,
right?
usually, yes, a significant other or a sibling or other family member, and actually do an enema. They put it in a solution and do an enema.
Sounds gross, but
know.
people need to know about
Yeah.
this stuff,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't
Yeah.
want the problem.
So, and what they found now is that people that have had this done for C. difficile, what they didn't realize is that some people, yes, they got rid of their C. difficile and they're much better. Some of them went on to gain a tremendous amount of weight. And it just so happens that the person that they got their transplant from was obese.
Oh gosh, that's interesting. Very interesting.
So,
There should be a
So-
double-blind study on that one.
The
right, I know.
Yeah. The other thing was, we had been talking before, and you were saying that it's not just about eating these fermented foods, and you were saying that some of these good bacteria, you can't add them by eating foods. That you started talking about how there's a prebiotics versus probiotics, and I had never heard of a prebiotic. I had to look it up on the internet to see if it was like something that you had made up or not.
Yeah.
But it actually is a thing called a prebiotic. I don't know if anybody's heard about this thing, but either way, can you explain what a prebiotic is and what a probiotic is, and why you can't just sometimes take the probiotics in order to fix the microbiome so that we can all be thin? So can you explain what that is?
Yes, so the probiotics is the actual living bacteria that we get from our fermented foods or supplements as well. So it's important to eat some sort of probiotics or bacteria, fermented foods every single day. The thing is that we want those good bacteria to stick around or colonize. I always say, I explain it, we want them to take up real estate and make babies, right? So in order to do that, we have to feed them. The food that they eat are the prebiotics. Prebiotics are all our soluble fiber foods. So soluble fiber foods, the foods that we have that have the highest amount of soluble fiber are chicory root, Jerusalem artichoke, and dandelion.
Nobody eats any of this stuff.
So yeah.
What is chicory root? I have no idea what that is. Anybody know what chicory root is? Does anybody go out and eat dandelions?
Yes.
I don't even know.
Right.
So how do you get these?
Inulin is the other term for chicory root. You'll see it in a lot
I have heard of inulin
inulin.
actually. Okay.
It's in
I'm
Fiber
getting
1
educated
bars.
right now.
Fiber 1 bars, there's a chicory root.
Okay.
Again, they're adding more fiber, it's Fiber 1. In my house, they call them fart bars. So, yeah, it causes a lot of gas and bloating.
Okay, great.
That means the bacteria is growing well,
That's
right?
That's right. There's good fermentation going on, and actually happens in the first part of the large intestine. So that's the reason why it has so much time to create gas and bloating. And yeah, people have a lot of issues. So, but the other foods, of course, there's the other foods, garlic, onions, leeks are also very high in soluble fiber,
right.
as well as most of our fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and our legumes and lentils. So, but those are the two things. So as a dietitian, I would love for all people to get all of their nutrients through whole foods. The two things that I do believe it's kind of difficult to do, basically for most people, is get enough probiotics and prebiotics. So possibly a supplement might be a good idea.
And that's one of the things that you have.
Yes.
Is you have this Just Better. Can you
Yes.
explain what this is exactly?
So yes, it is soluble corn fiber. I came across it just doing research on fiber products. The thing that I found so unique and beneficial about this particular product, not only that it has hundreds of clinical studies behind it on weight loss and diabetes and cardiovascular benefits, as well as even cancer and the prebiotic effect, but there's no taste and no flavor, no odor. You can cook and bake with it, and it doesn't cause any of the GI side effects, so there isn't any gas or bloating.
How much of that a day? Because when I took it, I was doing a tablespoon in the morning. Like, what do you recommend?
So depending on what the goal is, so if you're just kind of looking for the prebiotic effect and providing some good food for the probiotics and regularity, then probably just 1 to 2 tablespoons a day is fine. But if you're looking to decrease visceral fat, decrease your blood sugars, your cholesterol, triglycerides, then we're talking about 1 to 2 tablespoons per meal.
So after you explained to me what this was and exactly how this helped me with decreasing my visceral fat, because Danny and I have been getting into ketogenics and all of that, and you're familiar with that. And so I'm going to have Danny explain that a little bit. But as you were explaining it to me, I figured that what I wanted to do was to try to slow down my sugar uptake, because I love to eat those M&M cookies from Safeway. They're the big ones like that. I couldn't stop it. I keep
Keep
on.
buying.
Yeah. I don't know how you stop with that, right? But
That's yeah.
so
My weaknesses are different.
Yeah. So what I was doing was I was eating that cookie late at night so I could get a little bit, my fill on sweets, and then I was adding the Just Better into some water and drinking it down. Is there any validity to what I'm doing? Okay, can you explain what exactly is happening? If that's a good way of trying to slow down the sugar, or what's happening there?
So just when you eat that cookie,
Right.
just on a normal basis, right away the sugars start to get absorbed into your bloodstream, right? So which would spike your blood sugars, and then you would have a crash.
Okay.
Right. So, but if you add fiber, essentially what it does is it kind of makes a gel in your intestines. So the rate at which the sugars actually get across into your bloodstream is much slower and longer. So it kind of blunts the blood sugar effect.
Okay.
So it prevents that big spike and then the crash.
And so that relates to fat how?
Well, it has an effect on your triglycerides more
Okay.
so. Triglycerides being more indicative of your carbohydrate metabolism. So
And triglycerides are what?
the fats in your blood.
So there we go. So it ends up impacting the fats that are in your blood
Yes.
because you're eating sugar and you have this insulin spike, and
Yes.
you're kind of muting all of that
Right.
by having the fiber, and you slow down these sugars going into your
Your
system
bloodstream, right.
so that you don't end up depositing them into fat cells. So all in all, long story short,
Yeah.
gobbledygook, you don't get fat. Right. There you go.
Right.
Very
Well,
good.
So on that same note, as far as it also has to do with the insulin spike, right? Because that stimulates,
Lipogenesis, right?
That stimulates the fat storage.
Right.
So with someone like me, I don't have the sugar sweets, but I have carbohydrate cravings, especially when I've been working out.
Uh-huh.
So like at night, I'm going to make a bowl of rice.
Yes.
So if same thing, a little more complex carbohydrate than the cookie, but still going to have the same effect,
That's right.
And so if I was going to do a scoop of this, would you want to do it before you eat the rice, or
Good question.
Yeah.
or like and should there be a time, like how does that work? How quickly does it
With
work?
the meal.
Just with,
Yeah.
drink it and then
Yeah.
eat my rice and
Or put it in the rice cooker.
okay.
So that's how I make rice. And my family being Asian too, they are not willing to give up their white
Rice.
rice. They are not willing to give it up. Even though I've tried to get them to do brown rice or quinoa or they're just not going to do it. So what I do is I just have them add a half cup of the fiber into the rice cooker, just mix it up. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the taste, the flavor, anything, but it adds the fiber, so it pulls down that blood sugar.
Okay.
I love it.
And then, so just on that same note, I was working with a trainer, and they told me that jasmine rice was just as good as brown rice. Is that a true statement, or?
Oh, I'm not so sure about that. I
No?
would say because brown rice probably would have a little bit more fiber in it than jasmine.
And
Does it come from a fiber perspective? Is that
I
what you
think that would,
Okay.
again, but possibly. And then, there's other schools of thought about, if you let the rice cool and eat it cold, and, then you don't get the glycemic effect. And so, but,
Okay.
but yeah, I'm not aware of a difference between brown rice and jasmine.
Interesting. So, how do we get this? And so what do we do? How do we buy it?
I have an online e-commerce site, so getjustbetter.com is the website, and it comes in like 3 different sizes, and then I also have refillable to-go tubes that come with a funnel in a kit, so you can take it with you easily. But yeah, online.
Can I give them my code, my discount code?
Your discount code. Yeah, you can do that.
All right. So if you end up going to her website, which is, say it, your website again.
Getjustbetter.com.
Getjustbetter.com, and under the code you put in Karl, Karl, you'll get a 10% discount. So use it. That's pretty good. So anyway, I want to segue over to Danny over here. One of the things that is really interesting about Danny, when I had met him, he was much bigger than what he was now. I mean, he's like the incredibly anti-aging man, right? So if you want to end up learning about what to do to be able to do more, look better. This is the guy you got to talk to. And so he's constantly trying to improve himself physically, mentally, reading books and whatnot, supplements, all of it, right? So anyway, he turned me on to this book by Dave Asprey, The Bulletproof Diet. Now, I had done Atkins, and I had read The Belly Fat Diet, and I knew a little bit about ketogenics and about this other idea on how to burn fat and whatnot. And Danny kind of turned me on to all of this, and he's been doing it for a while. And you've lost quite a bit of weight. How much weight have you lost?
Well, so the story goes back 3 years, right? So I had torn my labrum in my hip, and through that I put on like an extra 10 pounds, which got me up to about 242 pounds. Was the heaviest I ever saw myself on my scale, and I was pre-diabetic, and I was like, okay, I'm being in the healthcare field, knowing what diabetes does to people. It's a very silent killer, probably. The metabolism syndrome, metabolic syndrome. I was pre that too, and I just said, okay, I'm not going to let this happen. So I kind of went to what most people, I think a lot of people do now. I went the low carb, kind of paleo version diet, and started to lose weight, exercise, of course, and then I was still having high blood sugars, even though I had dropped about 15 pounds. And so I started taking a cellular supplement, a CEEAA, which just went ahead and noticed 2 or 3 weeks started that my blood sugars really went low. And since that time, I've continued
Not that a CEEAA is a treatment or a cure for anything. It's just happened.
So from that point, I've continued on this low carb exercise diet, and I found Dave Asprey not because of diet at all. I was looking for mental acuity, and he had a YouTube video that was about 10 minutes long that was all on how do you gain the best mental acuity. And one of the things he talked about was getting in a ketogenic state. And from there, I started following him, and then I got the Dave Asprey book, and then we went on this kind of thing about 4 months since, because you've lost 20 pounds now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we both started following this ketogenic diet, which I'll let Karl go more into what that entails. But it's just been a transformation, and now so Dave Asprey talks about biohacking, meaning we're all different, we all respond to things differently and stuff, and so I'm trying to put some muscle on. So I'm tweaking the way I do things, because I was just following a pretty strict ketogenic diet, but I wasn't able to put the muscle on that I wanted. So now I'm modifying a little bit and not staying in such a ketogenic state. But by doing that, I can tell I don't have quite the energy when I'm in ketosis. It can really be a euphoric thing when you start being.
So wait a minute,
ketones.
you have more energy, and you're more euphoric whenever
when I'm in ketosis. Yes.
Okay, so can you, in real simple terms, try to explain what we're talking about when we're talking about a ketosis? And I would love for Kristin to kind of jump in if you're missing anything, but I want it super simple. So can you explain what we're talking about? What is ketosis?
So let's go super simple as the way, because I can understand complex ideas, but I have to really put them in a simple form. And so basically, when we eat a carbohydrate, we get insulin. When we jump our insulin, our body goes and says, oh, I've got plenty of calories. I'm going to go store this extra calories as fat. And so one of the big things I like is fat doesn't get you fat. It's carbohydrates, usually mixed with fat, that get you fat, because you're getting too many calories, and when you get that insulin spike, you're wanting to store. By going into ketones, so there's two major, and you correct me, but there's basically two major sources that we get energy from. One is the carbohydrates, and then the next one is what ketones. And what happens is when ketones form is when your body starts grabbing its own fat and turning it back into an energy source, and that energy source is a ketone. And
so wait a minute. So whenever there's two ways, right, of being able to fuel your body, basically. One way is through the breakdown of carbohydrates, which creates like a sugar, right? And that's what everybody does, right? Eat 6 meals a day and you burn your sugars and whatever. And then you have another kind of thing where you're burning your fats. And you're saying that when you burn your fats, the byproduct of the fat is called ketones.
Right.
And so we then call that a ketogenic diet. Okay,
Right.
so okay. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page, right?
And
how are we doing on that?
So
Great.
And so some of the side effects of first of all, you start going into weight loss if you're burning your own fat. And of course, we're just learning about this, but you become what they call keto adaptive, which means your body starts to like to burn its own fat more than using the carbohydrate. So that's kind of the long term, and that takes months and months and months up to a year to really get your body to change how it likes to metabolize. But you, again, not to get too complex, but when you burn a ketone, you get twice as much energy from the, like 64 ATP, which is your energy source for a cell, versus 32. Somewhere in that, it's a big jump. So when it comes to mental clarity and energy source for the cells, it's really good to be burning ketones over a fat.
Great. So can you explain like what has happened to you as far as how you feel when you're not eating as many carbs, besides the weight loss part, which you said, that happens with some people a little bit more and it doesn't happen to other people. And you mentioned that you wanted to get a little bit more mental clarity. Can you tell me a couple of the things that you've noticed by just doing this type of thing?
So one of the first, are you talking like when you get into that state?
When you get
like,
into
what
that
are the symptoms?
Yeah, how are you feeling?
One of the first things that I'll notice, and usually I push myself into a ketogenic state through exercise, I'll get a real sweetness in my mouth.
Okay.
And and some people do and some people don't. You don't get that fog at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You can push through the day. I used to be a big napper. I hardly ever take a nap. So those are some of the initial benefits. And then, I would say those are the big key ones right off the bat.
So you're doing a lot of things all at once, right? So you're feeling pretty good. You're exercising. You're taking some supplements. You're changing your diet. How do you know which one it is?
Well, I don't think you do. I think that's where the biohacking,
right.
There's too many influences of what you do. I mean, a good Saturday night throws me out of ketosis for at least a couple of days. My eyes are a little, so life is a balance, right? I like the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, you're trying to do all the right stuff. You try to make 5 good decisions a day, meaning you're eating, high quality fats, you're eating high quality fibers, and then you try to get your exercise in.
Right.
You could do that 4 or 5 days, then you can go out on Saturday and go ahead and have the piece of pizza and stuff, because one piece of pizza doesn't make you fat.
Right.
It's the cumulative effect of everything. What's
Right.
that book that we were reading? And it
The
was
compound effect.
a compound effect. So if you think about compounding interest with money, that's how you compound your fat too.
Yeah.
You take enough sugar and fat in together, you will definitely compound more fat. And that's so. But the reverse works too. You start eating right, and that's the other big thing. I used to never be an organic guy or grass-fed beef, and over the last 6 months, I go organic, and I try to go grass-fed beef as much as I pretty much stay away from American chicken because it's so pumped full of water and and steroids and stuff. Even if it's,
In fact, 80% of all the antibiotics in the United States goes into our livestock.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I started learning more about food, which is something that everybody has to learn a little bit more about, because I was kind of like, oh, that's all hogwash, right? But the more that you start learning more about foods, if you're wanting to become healthy, you start realizing things like what you just said, which is crazy. What antibiotics going into the food,
Well, and that's the thing that actually farmers have known for decades, right? It's kind of like the secret they've been keeping from us. They found out when they started introducing antibiotics to animals, right away, they got fat. And they got fat very fast.
Right.
The thing is, they didn't they didn't think about what happens when we eat the meat, the meat from those
Right.
animals. We also are exposed to the antibiotics, and we also get that.
Yeah.
And Danny's known me for years, and you know, I had to lose weight for Muay Thai, and I had to try to, you know, I got a younger wife, so I was trying to keep really young and fit, you know, and so I've always been, you know, questioning about what it is that I'm eating and things. And one thing that, you know, I'll go to another country and I'll eat like a hog. I will just eat like crazy, and I will come back and the scale will, you know, 2 pounds after being gone for like 2 weeks. You know, we went to Ecuador and we were eating mad every day, all the time, walking a little bit, and everybody would be like, "Oh, you're walking a lot." No, we were in such high altitude we couldn't walk. I couldn't breathe, right? But we were eating all the time. I come back, I don't have any weight gain. I end up going to Disney World, and I end
no
up
GI problems.
and no GI problems. That's one of the things that I'll end up talking about a little bit more is about my GI problems. But well, then I'll go to Disney, you know, and I'll spend half a week in Disney, and all of a sudden I'm up 7 pounds, and I just didn't understand any of that. Or I would end up talking to people who come from other countries, and they would, and I'd always kind of like laugh at them. I remember talking to some Indian folks. They had come in. They were pilots, and I had met them in Florida, and I asked them how they liked the American cuisine, and one of the things that they were commenting to me about was how everything was so big, all the chicken was so big, all the food was so big, and that the thing that they would talk about is how the chicken had no flavor.
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, over here you have to add flavor." And what are you talking about? Like, what are you, so big, no flavor? And I didn't realize that in the other countries they don't end up putting all of these antibiotics, and the food that they end up feeding are not so unnatural, and we've kind of driven the taste out of our food while end up increasing the bulk of our food. And so learning more about this type of stuff is pretty interesting.
Interesting. When I was in undergrad, my first physiology teacher worked for is it Farmer's Chicken? I don't know. It's one of the big chicken groups. Foster's Chicken, out of California, and he told us they had gotten it down to be able to do a full chicken in 32 days from egg, you know, from hatch to, you know, and that's just, you know, just not right. And that's their process. They're kept in a cage. So, but when I just got back from Mexico, and yeah, eating chicken there, it tastes so much better.
Yeah.
I just don't care for our local chicken, but got sidetracked there.
It's all good. So another thing that I wanted to talk with you about, Danny, was, you know, one of the things that I would say is a little bit abnormal about you is how you're always researching things. You're always looking at videos. You're always you know, looking at books. You're always looking at YouTube videos, and it's one of those types of things where it's hard to keep up, right?
I just have a little more. I don't have 2 little kids at my house. I got more time on my hands.
So one thing is, what types of things do you like to read or listen to, and when do you have time to do this?
Well, I tend to. I have a pair of headsets that I wear at home, so if I'm cleaning my house or whatever, I can be running a YouTube video. In my car, I get a ton of YouTube videos.
So you're not listening to the radio when you're in your car?
No, I can't handle the radio.
You're not
anymore. There's too
listening
many
to
commercials.
DVD, to CDs?
No, I would say 80% of the time, 90% of the time, I'm listening to something that's educating me at some level or not. If it's spiritually, if it's about food, if it's about exercise. I'm trying to put on more muscle right now, so right now I'm listening to a lot of the bodybuilders and the different sets and a kind of a different diet and what you know, looking at, you know, I started taking creatine and branched chain amino acids for recovery and stuff because I want to put on what Karl calls my glamour muscles. I want to try to build them up a little bit. So
I used to have those.
So whatever is sparking my interest, and then I listen to Gary Vee. He's like, this kind of the reason, one of the reasons we're doing this video. This all started, I guess, with Dave Asprey 4 or 5 months ago, and then from him, and I've been a Tony Robbins guy for a long time, and then I listened to a guy named Corey Wayne that's a relationship guy, and then found Gary Vee, and he's the one that's kind of like, well, we're all here for just a moment in time, and none of this is going to matter. So put yourself out there. It's better to get out here and fail than sit here and be like, God, I wish, I don't want to be 80. I'm like, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have started this business, or I wish I would have progressed this. It's now or never. Just step out. You're better off to get out and fail. And anybody that's been successful in life, they have failed more than they have succeeded. And so that's kind of, and I struggle with that. There's things I want to do, and so there's things I give excuses. I'm not going to do that yet. But that's just the ongoing thing. But I think listening to those people and watching what they do just makes you inspirational to go out and do it. And it's okay to fail. That's why we're here. Just
Right.
not to fail, but to try.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Oh.
does that help?
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're doing here is I had been talking to a bunch of my friends, and we realized that nobody has any time. Just nobody. Danny watches a lot of videos. I listen to a lot of books. I like to read and research things, and I get excited, and I try to bug everyone out there. You guys know that I've tried to send you books and tried to send you videos, and I can already see people on the other side of the line trying to press the button like, oh hell, why did I answer this phone call? Right? And so I figured out that it's probably not too effective when I'm asking them to listen to this thing that I just listened to that's 12 hours long, like the Dave Asprey book, and I figured that I have to do a better job because something's happening in my life that's really extraordinary. I'm feeling better. I'm looking better, I think. I'm able to do more than I had been doing before. I'm sharper. I'm learning a lot. I'm surrounding myself with pretty extraordinary people that have a vast array of different backgrounds, and I want everybody out there to start in knowing that this is not so difficult, but we're all limited by time. So I figured that what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start talking to different people that are out in the community, because the idea is that if you just have a thumb, what can the thumb do? It can't do very much. It can just push on something, right? But you need to have the other fingers to be able to hold on to something. You can do a lot with those other fingers. And so I'm going to be talking to people in our community that know a lot more about different things than I do, and I'm going to be bringing them out to you so that you guys don't have to read all these books. And that's what I'm going to end up doing.
Yeah, I think me and you have been on this journey for a while, and again, I want to give Gary Vee credit. I mean, the way we reach the masses is by doing these types of videos, because this will reach way more people than us walking in or talking to somebody. And if you want to listen, great. If you don't, that's all right. There'll be a time where I think when everybody's ready, when they're ready to learn or about things. This is a good way to do it.
Mm-hmm.